Good morning, everybody. Michael Cooper, Parkway Church, with another episode of Touch Base Tuesday. The song Crying Time was written originally by Buck Owens, a country artist who had recorded this on the back of a 45 on the B-side. Wasn't that successful, but 3 years later in 1967, a soulful Ray Charles recorded it, and it became an instant hit. And so that same year, Ray Charles won 2 different Grammy Awards for this song. It talks about a couple who are becoming distant with one another. The man senses it by her actions and says it won't be long before it's crying time. As I stepped out on the porch one day to do my devotion, I went to the book of Judges. And I got to reading in the book of Judges, and I found out how that Israel was so easily persuaded to do the things of the world, and they began to follow after the things of idolatry and going away from the Lord, His love and the relationship. So God would actually send armies or raise them up against them. And the people would all of a sudden, they would just begin to cry out. It was crying time. They cried, they repented, and God is just almost like you look in the scriptures that it was instantly that God repented and forgave them and their relationship was restored. This happened not just one time, not 2 times, but if I read right, it happened 3 different times. And I wanted to talk to you today. This is what I feel like that my goal is in doing this episode today, is that like Hannah, the Bible says that she was barren. The Lord had shut up her womb. In the Old Testament, it's sometimes the husband would not just have one wife, but he had 2 wives. And this was the case. And the one wife, she bare him children. But Hannah was in such a desperate state. And I'm wondering again, if I'm talking to anybody, have you ever been in just a desperate state and everything just seemed to be barren? There's no prayers that are being answered. And have you ever just shut yourself in and had a good cry? Now, I'm a man. I'm going to confess. I have just poured out my heart, my soul, and just prayed and sought God. Had me a good time of crying. And I felt like that I had touched God. And so it was with Hannah. Hannah was at the feast. They were eating. They were drinking. And just one day, she just got to the point. This is where you got to get. When you get desperate. She excused herself, went to the front of the temple. Sometimes it's crying time, folks. You just got to have a good cry. And in verse number 10 of the first chapter of the first book of Samuel, it said, "And she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore." She prayed so much that when the priest spoke to her, he accused her of being drunk. And she said this. She said in verse 15, and Hannah answered and said, "No, my Lord, I'm a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord." And Eli recognized, and he said, "Go in peace." This is what he said. "And the God of Israel grant thy petition thou have asked of him." And we know the rest of the story. She promised God, "If you'll give me this child, I promise you, I will give this child back to you. I will dedicate him to you for the work of the Lord." And she did. And we know that Samuel was born and used mightily for God. But I pray today that you'll cry out to the Lord. Again, it's crying time again. God bless you. And I pray that you've enjoyed this and pray that you'll share this, and we'll see you next week.